Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Collective's launch event. We're super happy to have you here today, wherever you're joining from. We are a newly launched nonprofit organization based in Brussels, and we are working towards the digital inclusion of marginalized and vulnerable groups across Europe. This launch event is organized as a multi-stakeholder talk, sparking conversations between different players in the field of digital inclusion, and sharing needs and challenges in the space of digital inclusion today, together with some concrete tools and some concrete strategies to tackle those challenges and tackle the digital divide. We have a pretty packed agenda today, very exciting topics and very exciting speakers. We'll jump straight into it. We hope the webinar will bring you great takeaways. We hope that the panel will be as valuable as possible. And we also want the event to be as engaging as, so feel free to chat in the chat function and also ask your questions in the Q&A functionality of the Zoom call. I'd like to start by asking everyone where you're joining from and also which organization you're part of, so that you can get acquainted with each other. The call will also be recorded and then it will be posted on our social media channels. Now we'll start with the introduction speech by Lisa Varga, our co-founder and co-director.
Thank you so much, Leah, and thank you everybody for joining. We're really excited to have you all here today. As Leah said, I am Lisa, and I am one of the co-founders and directors at DigiCo, or the Digital Collective. So DigiCo is a not-for-profit organization that was founded to create a united approach to digital skills throughout Europe and across the world. We aim to empower organizations and put in place a community of knowledge sharing and collaboration to support a unified digital skills framework that will allow people from all backgrounds to access the skills and knowledge that they need. Our mission is to ensure all people have access to the skills that can improve their lives and help them thrive in the digital age through a collective and unified approach to tackling growing societal and economic inequalities and improving access to labor markets. Through the work that we have done across many different areas globally and extensive research, it's clear that communities and people that feel the effects of the widening digital divide are those vulnerable and marginalized from society in one way or another. For that reason, we have put these audiences at the center of all the work that we hope to do through the collective. And they are really at the core of everything that we do and all the interventions that we are working on. And this extends to our partner organizations and our wider community of practice. We believe that we cannot close the digital divide until all people have access to the basic skills they need, not only to improve their lives, but to simply survive in the digital age that we currently live in. Many say that the pandemic has accelerated digital adoption, and they're right, but it has also cemented it within our global society. It's part of our everyday lives, from work to education, and even to the way that we interact as social beings. And so the Digital Collective was formed to unite and unify the way we approach and tackle basic digital issues at a European and global level. We're on a mission to create an ecosystem of organizations working towards digital inclusion. But we're also working on ways to make accessible skills and training interventions, and also to be able to sort of bring together an easy and accessible way to assess where you are within your digital journey. So we're really excited to announce that along with the launch of our sort of digital collective, we are also launching a digital skills assessment platform called Skillify. Now, this is completely free to use and is in the process of being translated across multiple languages in the coming months. It's based off the DigiComp framework, so it's really grounded in science and research, and we're really excited to be able to partner with our organizations to push it out to their networks as well. It assesses basic digital skills levels of learners across 4 areas of the DigiComp, and it combines a mix of self-assessment as well as test questions to provide learners with an accurate report of their skills, as well as pointing them to training opportunities and interventions that can help them improve areas where they need the most support. So not only is it assessing, but it's also giving them tangible actions and ways to improve. We have a few ways that we partner and subgrant and engage with organizations, and we're always looking for new organizations to join the collective. As well as working with organizations, we're also really eager to look at other organizations that are willing to fund and support us on our mission. And if you are interested, please reach out to me or one of my team members. So I won't keep you very much longer. I know we have some exciting panel discussions coming up. Again, thank you so much for joining, and we're really, really excited to share knowledge and hear from some amazing panelists. So I will hand back to Leah.
Thank you, Lisa, for this introduction and setting the scene for this event today. So to start, we'd like to have someone who's been working and has been active in the digital skills space and the digital inclusion space for a few years, and who's working on these topics in his country, Romania, and also at the European level. So we'd like to welcome Victor Negrescu, Member of European Parliament, to the stage. Welcome, Victor.
Hello to everyone.
Welcome.
I'm here in Strasbourg, so sorry for the bad connection. So when we speak about connectivity, we also need to reinforce the connectivity of institutions as well. So I'm the Vice Chair of the Culture and Education Committee in the European Parliament, and I have been, of course, the Rapporteur of the European Parliament on digital education, making digital education accessible for a large group of people. And of course, making digital education a right, like education is a right as well. So I think, of course, first of all, I want to congratulate you on this initiative. I think it's really important, again, to raise the profile, raise the visibility on accessibility, on inclusion when it comes to digital transformation. This is not easy. This is not an easy process. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of involvement. Of course, at European level, national level, but also local level, but also global level, because I noticed you have people also from outside European Union. Because we noticed during the pandemic that actually, we are not prepared for the digital transformation. We thought everything was fine. We thought everyone was all connected because they had social media accounts. We thought the process is going to be easy. But we understood, hopefully, during the pandemic, that actually things are not as easy as we believed before. We noticed as well that 2/3 of school children across the world didn't have an internet connection. We noticed that our companies were not digitalized enough in order to enable people to work remotely. We noticed that it was hard, of course, sometimes to connect to the market next door or to have a video connection with our partners. But from this challenge that was in front of us, we started to adapt. We started to improve things, but we didn't do enough. This is my opinion. We need to continue in doing that. Even today, knowing that maybe the pressure of the pandemic is not as hard as before. And in order to do that, we need a concrete plan, but also understand what we mean by a process that needs also, first of all, to increase the number of participants and the people that have access to it, but also maintain and keep the quality of this access to the digital transformation. And in order to do so, we need to define it really well. And I'm going to give you an example when it comes to digital education. So we switched to online education during the pandemic, and most of the people believe that this was digital education, but this was not digital education. Online education is simply, a connection, a remote connection. But digital education implies specific methods, a specific curriculum, specific educational resources, specific infrastructure for that also. So you need to define all of that to have a process that is really successful. And what we noticed is that many people rejected the process because of that. Also, we noticed that many people from social disadvantaged background, many vulnerable people, didn't have access to these new tools. And we developed different programs. And some of the programs were really badly implemented. So for instance, we had EU-funded programs designed to give kids from vulnerable groups tablets. And we oblige poor families to sign a piece of paper when they receive the tablet. And in the same time, in the same form, they were also accepting the fact that if the tablet got destroyed or lost or stolen, the family was supposed to pay back for the tablet. And the poor families didn't accept the tablets anymore because they were scared of having to pay back the tablet afterwards, because they didn't have the money to pay it in the start. So why receive a tablet that can be destroyed and for which they need to pay back again the cost? And there have been many bureaucratic problems with regards to this process in relation to education, but also beyond education. So I developed a couple of projects. I developed an educational tablet. I distributed thousands of tablets across Romania with the support of different partners. I try to engage, like you are trying to engage today as well, to show concretely how this process needs to happen and how this process can have a true and effective impact. So we are today forced to a certain degree to accelerate the process. We are forced to accelerate the process because there are increasing gaps when it comes to digital transformation, increasing gaps. And those gaps are going to grow even further as technologies evolve. We are going to have artificial intelligence, we are going to have more robots, we are going to have new digital tools that are going to be needed in our daily lives. From the person working in the factory to the teacher or to the doctor. And those skills need to be required as early as possible in order not to, extend the inequalities. And how do we do that? How do we make sure those new tools are being accessible and are being accessed as well in a qualitative way across the world, across Europe? This is not easy. You cannot do that by simply developing an action plan in Brussels. You need to have a follow-up of all of that process. And in this regard, organizations like yourself are needed to supervise the process, to make sure the action plans are being delivered, to make sure that the funding is reaching the right people and the people that are using the fund in a proper way, that all the social issues are being taken into consideration. So, of course, you have a lot of work in front of you, yourself, but also your colleagues and partners from across the world. You can count on my full support. I'm certain that you can count on the support of my colleagues in the European Parliament. Try to work with you, exchange, learn from each other, but also deliver at the end, because there are high expectations for people to see the digital transformation process as being as inclusive as possible. And for that, we need to work together. Thank you again for the invitation, and you can count on my full support.
Thank you so much, Victor Negrescu, for this opening. I think everything you said resonates with what the Digital Collective is trying to do, and most specifically, the urgency of acting now. This is why we're having this event today, because we want to bring everyone in the field together in order to have collective actions planned to bridge the digital divide. And as you mentioned, and as Lisa mentioned at the start, we are targeting especially vulnerable people, people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And we think that these are the target groups we should tackle first to bridge the digital divide and really start with basic digital skills. So thank you so much for your speech. I think it was great to set the scene for the rest of the event. So what better ways to jump straight into the topic of digital inclusion than having learning providers themselves sharing their experience about running digital inclusion programs in Europe. So I'd like to start with the first panel. So welcome to all the panelists for the first panel. We have Philip We have Jackie. Welcome. Nenya and Sophie. Thank you so much for joining, the four of you. So the topic of this panel is engaging vulnerable communities to improve basic digital skills in post-COVID times. Lessons learned from the field. So the goal of this panel is really to gather first-hand experience on running digital skills programs for vulnerable people in your context, in your country, in Europe, and to really get both the challenges that you have in your daily work, but also the concrete strategies and tools you use to tackle these challenges in order to share with the audience some concrete examples and concrete ways to work with vulnerable groups. So this panel is really about hands-on experience and field experience. So first of all, I'd like to ask each of you to introduce yourself with your name, the organization, and just answering to the question, why do you think this conversation around digital inclusion is urgent now? Why do we need to act now? So I'd like to start with Jackie.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Jackie van Velzen. I'm the director of the Reading and Writing Foundation, a Dutch nonprofit organization that focuses on preventing and tackling low literacy in the Netherlands. Within the Netherlands, there are about 2.5 million, so 1 out of 8 people with low literate skills. They have difficulties with reading, writing, calculation, and math. And within this digital time, we consider digital skills to be one of the basic skills that you need to fully participate in society. And as our times are becoming more and more digital, you need digital skills to participate in society and fight exclusion. So this is actually why this discussion is so needed now.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Sophie.
Hi, everybody. Good morning. So lovely to see so many different people from all around the world attending here today. Thanks a lot for having us. I'm Sophie, and I'm leading the Ready School of Digital Integration. We are a Europe-wide nonprofit digital school, and I'm zooming in from our Munich campus here today. We teach digital skills in free courses to refugees, migrants, and locals who do not have access to digital education or a professional network. And I think we heard already today that in the near future, there are almost no jobs anymore that you can do without having access to digital skills. Today alone in Germany, we're missing up to 100,000 open positions in the field of technology and IT. So we therefore need many new talents who have access to these digital skills. And at the same time, we can hear that there are still so many people digital illiterate, so leaving the most vulnerable ones of our society at the end of this line. So for me, there has never been a better time for starting this initiative.
Thank you so much. Now, Philip, please. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Again, as Sophie and others said, thanks for having me here. It's a great opportunity to be here with you. I'm greeting you from Ostrava, Czech Republic, so the eastern part of our country. And I work as a community navigator at GUG.cz, which is a nonprofit. And for the past 14 years, we've been helping people get new skills. We are a community of volunteers who invest their time into organizing events for public, for teachers, for developers, for entrepreneurs. And our goal has been and is and will be to help people get new skills, not only in tech, but also in future skills that we need now, and we can see it every day, and we will definitely need in the following years. So happy to be here and help with this area.
Great, thank you. And I will finish with Nenya.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everyone. Also for me, it's very nice to see you all and see this active community. Yeah, I'm Nenya Wolbers. I work for Stiftung Digitale Chancen in Berlin, or Digital Opportunities Foundation in English. We are a nonprofit organization that actually has the goal to promote digital inclusion for all vulnerable groups, for all target groups. And this year we have our 20th anniversary, so we actually do this for 20 years now. And the interesting part is that it's not it's not gone, this need, right? Like we are still there, we are still trying to get people online and trying to help them to benefit from the internet. And we've heard already that also in Germany there's still a lack, and still we need some trainings and methods. And I was thinking about this question that you asked us, and I think that with, for example, the online access law we have now in Germany coming, that's a law that says that like many of the the proceedings in the authorities, when you go like through bureaucratic proceedings, they have to be online as well. And so many people get very scared that they cannot go anymore and speak to people, but they have to do everything online and they cannot do it. So for 20 years, we're working in this field, and it's still very, very, very current, and the problematic is there. Just to add, I'm also the vice chair of the European Network Organization, All Digital. And I think we have already a few members of this network here as well. So hello to them.
Great, thank you so much for your introduction, the four of you. Just before we start the panel, I would like to just give a brief agenda of the panel so that have a clear idea. So we'll have the panel discussion with 3 questions for 30 minutes, and then we'll have 10 minutes to leave space for the audience to ask questions. So please, throughout the panel, you can ask your questions. It would be better if you can put them directly in the Q&A functionality of Zoom. Otherwise, you can put it in the chat, but it will be just easier on the Q&A functionality. So we have 40 minutes ahead of us. So the first question I'd like to ask our panelists today, obviously the topic of our panel is engaging vulnerable communities in for digital skills training. So engaging means a lot of things, and I'd like to start the first question about reaching out to those communities and really recruiting them into your digital skills training programs. So we know that the hardest to reach groups, so the vulnerable communities we're talking about, sometimes don't use the mainstream forms of communication, and they don't use simply the same communication tools as the others. And they might have trouble accessing, therefore, information concerning your program or concerning just general information about training, not only about your training in particular. So my first question is really about this reaching out. It's about what strategies do you use to attract vulnerable communities and marginalized people into your training programs? And what challenges have you faced in recruiting those students? Because we know there's this lack of access to information. So I'd like to start with Jackie, who targets specifically people who are low literate in the Netherlands. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leah, to tell you a little bit more about the way we work, because what you say, we find that on a daily basis, one of the most challenging tasks that we see ahead for us, that is to engage with the most vulnerable and try to seduce them to start learning again. And for people with low literate skills or low basic skills, well, digital skills are one of them, most of them don't feel attracted to any learning programs. Many people find themselves with low self-esteem, negative experiences in school, and they don't feel as if lifelong learning programs are related to them or could be an opportunity for them. So there's much needed to attract those people and seduce them to start learning again. And one of the things that we use as a strategy, what we sometimes call camouflage, is to not focus on what is for example, the technical parts, or what is the grammar when you talk about literature, about learning a new language, or focus on skills in general. But what we want to do is to really align with the motivation and the day-to-day benefits that you have from joining any program. For example, when you start about digital skills, it has to do about not learning how to use a computer or programming or artificial intelligence. We try to align with day-to-day skills, as, for example, how to make a profile on social media and place a photograph on it, or learn how to use your digital identity. And for example, when you think about COVID, you need to show everywhere that you had your vaccinations. How do you do these kind of things? Or for example, how to use a parent portal when you have kids going to school. These are the things that people with low literate skills more often find interesting, and it's something that they can learn easy and they can make progress. So our advice always in our strategy is not to focus on the skills or the program or the grammar or the technical parts, but to really align with day-to-day benefits that you use in your daily life. That's one of the things that we try to do within the Netherlands.
Thank you so much. Sophie, I'd like to hear your perspective from Germany about this reaching out and this recruitment of students as well. Oh, you're muted.
So sorry. I must say I really like your approach, Jackie, and I think it's pretty similar to ours, that we orient very much on the practicality for our students. We have various promotion strategies that were successful for us. We collaborate on the one side with multiplicators, such as other nonprofits who already have their communities, and I think trust is has a lot to do with also why students come to us, and if they are recommended by other multiplicators, this often helps a lot. We also work with refugee homes or district admissions to spread the word about our initiative. And yeah, the other part is that we have a big existing community already in various locations across Europe. In Munich, we are around 5,000 people who are part of our community here. So word of mouth to reach the unreachable is actually working very well to us. The third part is social media, because what we can see is that even though the communities might not have access to a computer yet, many are still using a smartphone, and via groups like on Facebook, for example, Ukrainians living in Munich or so, it is helpful to get in touch. One challenge that is always existing for us is that the recruiting process of these very beginner in our courses takes a lot of time, because we recruit everybody on a one-to-one level. So this is something that we always need a lot of capacities for.
Thank you so much. Now I'd like to go to Philip and to resonate with that aspect of community. Philip is running a community of communities. I'd like to have your perspective, Philip, from Czech Republic on the community aspect, the importance of community in recruitment of vulnerable groups.
Yeah, thank you for that. What Sophie and Jackie said resonates as well. So the word of mouth or working with different communities and focusing on the practical side of things works for us. And plus what has been working for us for the past 14 years is that we are created by volunteers, and every single one of us has their own another community, and just not the ones we are part of, but another one. And since we are in different communities, we build, as you mentioned, a certain community of communities, and this helps us target different groups from different areas, from different age groups, and so on. So that's the way we hopefully want to use again in this initiative, and that has been working for us for the past years. And yeah, not to repeat all the things that were mentioned again, that works for us as well.
Thank you, Philip. Now I'd like to go back to the German context and ask Nenya in her work at Digital Opportunities Foundation, which targets a bit of a broader audience. How do you do recruitment? Which strategies do you use to get in touch directly with the target groups?
Yeah, thank you. I can only agree with what has been already said by my colleagues. I mean, especially in the Corona pandemic times, we have realized that it is not so easy, or it is very difficult or almost impossible to reach people that are not yet online at all. So those who would benefit mostly from this kind of trainings, and I totally agree also with the methods that there should be very hands-on and very learner oriented. But how do we reach them if they are not online at all, and we only have the possibilities of reaching them online? So what we did in the last years, actually, not only in Corona times but before as well, is to work with the people that work with them. So kind of a multiplier approach. So our trainings are often train the trainers or train the multipliers, and we try to get them empowered to teach or to train or to work actually with their beneficiaries in the end. One example that worked for us now for many years is to give tablet computers to, for example, retirement homes, or to senior citizens facilities, or to computer clubs that work with senior citizens. And we've realized very fast that it's not enough to just give them the devices, but you really have to show people who work there to become multipliers, to work with the senior citizens. So that's what we did. We have guidelines, we have a training for these caretakers, for example, to work with the senior citizens directly, and learn how to really show the basic use of these tablets, but also to show to them how they can really integrate this in their daily lives and benefit from it. So, for example, to show that this is a camera and a music device, and also it is something to research where you're from or where you're going, so traveling and all these kind of things. This is a very really practical example, but there are more. For example, we would like to have become that librarians or libraries become more like a center for the community, where they can go and where they can really experience digital media, experience what benefit it can be for them. That's something that we set out now in the future, for the future. Yeah.
Thank you. Jackie, do you want to answer to what Nenya said?
Yeah, I wanted to add, because I was, for us, it was so recognizable, not only what libraries could do, but also to build a community with volunteers, with senior citizens that can work as a multiplier to invite others and make them aware, for example, that there are free courses in community centers, etc., and libraries that could help them. And what we tried to do in the Netherlands as well is to build networks also with professionals, for example, doctors, nurses, social workers, to really raise the awareness of the opportunity that there is for all vulnerable people to access free courses for digital skills, but also just language issues, etc. And simple help, for example, with the bureaucratic forms that most of the governments send out to our civilians. And that helps a little bit for them to find a way, especially when they're not online at all. We work the same way with social media and Facebook groups, etc., but also for them to really have medical doctors, nurses, social workers, etc., being aware of those courses. They can just be, for example, just give them the introduction and help them to find those courses if they're not online.
Thank you so much. So just briefly to summarize, we talked about the importance of community reaching out to the communities where those target groups are. We talked about the importance of multipliers and people, professionals working directly with those target groups, and making those people aware of those programs so that they can share the information with the vulnerable community. Thank you so much, the four of you. Now I'd like to go to the second question, which is, now we talked about recruitment. Now I'd like to talk about student retention and motivation during the training program. So we know that marginalized or vulnerable groups often have difficulties in learning in general, and not just about digital skills. And this has worsened with the pandemic and the ensuing lack of physical classes. How do you tackle this lack of motivation post-pandemic? And more specifically, which kind of strategies, like concrete strategies, do you use in your organization in order to keep students engaged and motivated throughout the learning program? So I'd like to start with Nenya.
Yeah, thank you. That's such a difficult question to answer, how to keep them to really, yeah, keep going through the program. I mean, I think we have already mentioned some of the aspects that are actually important. For us, it would be to create a very learner-oriented training program that is flexible enough to fit or can be flexible used to fit the needs of the learners. That's one part. It should be really close to their daily lives. We have said this as well. And we should choose methods that really meet the needs of the people. And I would say that one other important part is to be creative enough, like to have creative methods so that they stay interested in the training program. We have actually, there's a manifesto of all digital that really covers all of these many demands that we would all have on a training for this for vulnerable people regarding digital skills. But for me, like one of the examples would be, because I said creativity, is we had a training for newcomers that in which, of course, we wanted to facilitate digital skills, but we did it by digital storytelling. So they had to they had to create a story, they had to tell their story, which was very magnificent, and really great to hear. And we had to, and they had to, with a computer, to really look for pictures, see are they like on the Creative Commons, can I use them? They had to use the program to put a video together. So this was very, in some way, this was a very creative way to use different digital skills and learn them and become sufficient in their use. So I would say that this is important. And one last point, maybe, we also realized that many of the programs that really work are programs that involve the participants from the start. So, for example, we had a co-creation project in which people from the start developed with us the program together. And so they kind of felt that this is their own. They accepted the program as something that is not just for them, but we created it with them. I know this is not always possible and it's hard to do, but if it's possible, it's, I think, one of the very best things to keep them engaged throughout the whole thing. Yep.
Thank you so much. Yes, what you said is really important about the co-creation process, but as you said, it might not be always possible, also because some of the target groups might have low literacy or levels, as Jackie was mentioning in her organization before. I'd like now to go to Philip to answer the question. In your programs, in your trainings or workshop, what strategies do you use to keep people engaged and motivated?
Yeah, thank you. So actually what you said, one of the last part was co-creation. And since we are a little bit different from like typical organization who prepare their program for the students as I mentioned, we are a community of volunteers who create all the workshops and presentations and lectures and so on. So the motivation is really the key here. So, and I was a part of that community from the beginning. So I know that I had to be very motivated to invest my free time, the most valuable thing that we have right now, into helping other people learn new skills. And I was actually learning by doing. So that's one of the concrete strategies, is learning by doing. So in our community, we learn by doing, and we focus on things that we think are important for us. So finding motivation for us. And if we are motivated and we like the topic, the workshop, then there's a high chance of the attendees also liking the topic. The next thing is that we try to communicate with our target groups. Either it can be teachers or developers. It really depends on the city, on the area where we work and throughout the country. So we try to communicate with them. So usually we start, if it's a new initiative, we just prepared what we like and we think is relevant, but then we finish the workshop or the training by asking the community or the participants, what else do you want to learn? What topic is there is important to you? So that's another thing. So that's the one way we work. And for the new initiative that we are launching, thanks to you, we want to work on, or we want to have 3 main areas, which is we want to have the focus on the content being mobile friendly and mostly being presented by videos, which are easy to digest, easy to understand and watch. And we want to have the content divided into smaller parts. So even if I had just 15 minutes per day to learn new skills, that's enough to learn at least a small portion of new information. And we also want to build on our community that we have and support the people who will attend our courses to create a community of learners and to support each other. It can be just sharing what goes okay and what doesn't work, and sharing that with us so we can improve the project while doing that.
Thank you, Philip. I think it's very interesting. The part about having just short snippets of the training per day, I think it's really important because long training hours might seem scary for some people. So I think this is definitely a good strategies that organizations can adopt. I'd like to go now to the last question of our panel before we go into the Q&A. And also feel free to add any other questions in the Q&A. This is really important for us. We'd like to have your ideas and your questions to the panelists. So the last question is about, so we looked at the recruitment, we looked at the student retention, motivation. Now I'd like to go into the student progression and lifelong learning after the training program. So throughout all your programs, how do you ensure student progression after they've finished your training program, and what do you do to support your students throughout their learning journey, and so that their learning doesn't stop just after they left the classroom or the online course? How do you make sure that they will progress with other skills and also with their projects in general? And how do you make sure they meet their goals and that it's a lifelong learning process and that it doesn't stop right there? I'd like to start with Jackie, please.
Thank you so much, Leah. Yeah, I think one of the things that really helps with the motivation and keep your lifelong learning attempts positive is that you have little successes. So it's important actually to always try to do a very serious screening and intake moment so you can find the right program that meets the needs and the levels of skills of your participants throughout all your lifelong learning needs. And one of the focuses that we have, for example, is that the language levels from the participants, they really affect the way they can meet with their digital skills progression and needs for the programs and their interests with their lifelong learning. And one of the things that we, for example, developed is a digital meter, is a screening instrument. And we start actually every intake for all of our programs, preferably with one of those screening instruments. And they start with the entry level and the basic level, the European basic level one that we have. And what is actually interesting is if you do that very seriously and you figure out what is the language level and the digital skills level that people need, it will be more easy, for example, to finish off your courses and your programs and to really measure your success. And that's one of the things that, in our vision actually motivates people a lot. And also what we meet a lot of the time is that participants cannot cope with the language level used in a lot of the digital skills programs. So we developed also very low literate digital programs, and that helps to create successes for our participants. And we can actually measure those successes with our screening instrument.
Thank you, Jackie. Now I'd like to go to Sophie to answer this question.
Thank you. And I really, really like that even though we are based in so many different locations across Europe, there are similar approaches to how we tackle this issue. So thanks a lot to the co-panelists here. What I want to start with is that we also at Ready have a way of co-creating each program and course that we offer together with our target group. In the beginning, that was mainly refugees. So all our courses and formats are completely based on the needs of our student community, and at the same time also with the requirements that are set through the tech and digital industry, because we also involve the tech experts and digital leaders into the co-creation processes with our students. The outcome of this is a combination of tech training, soft and career skills workshops, as well as individual mentorship opportunities, and even from time to time childcare opportunities for them, for mothers and parents who cannot participate otherwise. So I believe that this practicability and the engagement of the amazing volunteer trainers and the collaboration possibilities with the companies in our network are a part of the high motivation of our students. What we can see is that if we start training our students how to use one tool, they actually learn how to learn. And this means that in the future, it will be easier for them to learn a new tool because they know already their learning curve and what the process here is. So I think that this is the essential thing, no matter if it's really in digital literacy, from starting to learn how to use one video conferencing tool, or if it goes higher into learning how to program. If you learn one time how yourself learns the best, and this can be supported via the diverse offers within our programs, then you're better prepared to any changes that are coming up, and can therefore continue your learning journey even after the courses of ours have ended.
Thank you so much. Now for the last answer, Nenya, please. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I totally agree with everything that was just said. So I can only add that we also would go for empowering the people to find their own ways to use these devices, and not to teach them you have to press here this button, but really think about, like, if you see a magnifying glass, that's always search, for example. So give them some sovereignty in using the tools, and I would say that this would be the most important goal to achieve this in the learner. Short answer.
Great. Anyone else wants to add something? We have time for one more answer from the panelists, or? No? Okay. Then we have some times for questions. So I see some of you already have answered some of the questions, but I think we can still ask it to the other panelists, because it's a very interesting question. One of the question is, which role do you see for IT professionals who have digital skills and could perhaps help, but maybe they don't see or understand the digital divide? I think this is really interesting. I see that Philip and Sophie have already answered. Would you like to add anything else? Or if not, Nenya and Jackie, would you like to answer that question? Feel free.
I mean, maybe I can just say that it is always, because we talked before about the multiplier approach, it's always important to teach, or both, like to have digital skills, but also have the educational competences to really facilitate the knowledge. And we, in the program that I said before with the senior citizens, we often start with having a tablet and explaining what are the buttons around, and then people who already know this, and this is boring, but then they realize, okay, this is where we have to start, and this is something that people still might not know. And so I'm not sure if this answers the question probably, but I think it's always like a combination of both. Like you have to have the technical knowledge, but you have to have the understanding of what the people need as well.
Yeah, and if I can add something, Nanya, there's also just a different way to look at this idea, what tech people could add within this challenge. Is also, I think, that the awareness within society, that there's such a huge group of people that just, don't connect to this digital society that speeds up, and they just, the awareness that this group is about 20% in the Netherlands, but both in Europe, actually even bigger. That's something that is very important if you want to close this digital divide. So for all the technical companies to be aware that there's a huge percentage of the European population that cannot keep up with the speed that they find themselves in. I think that's also very important. So the awareness within society of those who cannot keep up with this speed, I think that's important as well. And that's something that tech companies, they can hand in with that.
Thank you. Philip, would you like to go?
Yeah, maybe one more thing apart from what I wrote in the chat is that what works for me and what I keep asking within our community and what we have to keep repeating to ourselves is like coming back to the users, to the people in general who in the end maybe have a smartphone in their pocket, but that's all they know about that device, that it's called a smartphone, and it can send a message and dial a call, and that's it. And when we start speaking about accounts and security, then they are completely lost. So coming back every single day, remembering that the social bubble around us is our own bubble, but we need to keep coming back to the users and keep asking them and trying to understand their point of view of like around technology.
Thank you. I will take one last question before we jump into the last remarks from our panelists. The question is about, are the training programs evaluated to see what works well and where improvement is needed? So I see that Sophie already replied. If Nenya, Jackie, or Philip would like to answer, are your training programs evaluated? And if yes, how do you improve your programs? Feel free to jump in.
Well, yeah, they are. And also it's funny that actually the technical developments go so fast. So we make, for example, booklets with, for example, how to use Zoom or how to use a WhatsApp group. And as soon as the layout is actually changing within the digital world, we have to keep up and make new publications as well. So yeah, we try to evaluate and stay as close to real life and daily life for our learners as possible. So we do, and yeah, we try to have feedback and learn with that, but also we want to really, with all our programs, actually, we try to assess what is the progress, not only on the language or the skills level, but also about how much it helps with people to participate in society. So navigating through society is one of the goals with our program, to be able.
Would you like to add anything else, Nenya, Philip?
I can only agree. I mean, we tried to in several programs. We tried even after a while to check on the participants and ask them, did they use anything of the skills they have learned? And then mostly the feedback is good, I have to say. But we also evaluate, of course, the methods, and I think this is part of this kind of the idea of co-creating a program. At least you can always check, is the method okay? Would you need something else? Is do you need a different approach? So yeah, same here. It's very important.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for all your great insights from different countries across Europe. I'd like to finish this panel with just one last remark from each of the panelists. And so the question to answer is, what is one key advice that you would give to other organizations working in the digital inclusion space and running digital inclusion programs? As you've seen in the chat, a lot of the people who are here today also run programs like this. And so from your experience, what would be one key advice, one key strategy to implement in their program? I'll start again, same order as the introduction. So with Jackie.
My advice would be to try to adopt daily life digital skills in all of your learning programs and align with the day-to-day motivation of your learners.
Thank you. Sophie, please.
Yeah, thank you. I would stay with the co-creation part. So always co-create and never stop. What we have a saying at Ready is, alone you go fast, together you go far. And this always comes up to what we're seeing. And I think you are never wrong with including everybody and yeah, finding a shared solution.
Thank you. Philip?
My advice is fail fast and fail often. Don't be afraid of failing. We even internally, we have an award for that. So the bigger failure you achieve, the bigger prize you get at the end of the year. So don't be afraid of that.
Nice, nice advice. Nenya.
Yeah, I love that actually. My advice would be to connect yourself to other organizations who are doing the same, exchange, get their best practices, learn from each other. I mean, I think the community of practice that you are building is a really good start of, for sure. The network of all digital, there you can get connection and networking going. So I think that would be my advice.
Thank you so much. I know we didn't have that much time to discuss all the very interesting insights. So thank you to all the panelists for joining this panel. And I hope that the audience got really great insights and some concrete ideas, concrete solutions to tackling the digital divide. Now it's my pleasure to hand over to our other co-founder and co-director, Gori, which will introduce the second panel. Thank you, Gori.
Thanks so much, Leah, and what an amazing panel. Thank you so much for all the panelists earlier. Really, really amazing insights, to having people at the forefront, on the ground, really engaging students and getting them excited about owning their learning journey. So I'm very excited, very pleased to be chairing the next panel. Super excited about this because this really focuses on pathways to employability. We're really looking at how frameworks, assessments, certifications, the piece that they play in or the part that they play in aligning our approach to tackling the digital skills gaps, especially for vulnerable individuals. At the Digital Collective at Digico, we are really big on bringing stakeholders together, right? We're very much conveners. We want to empower and catalyze programs. And we've done just that with this panel. We want to ensure that we're truly able to understand where the challenges lie, in standardizing our approach to learning programs, to providing certifications, to assessments, and boosting pathways to employability. Employability is one part. When I look at digital inclusion, there is a wide sort of range of approaches to support people across the board. Again, just as Leah mentioned, I'm Gori Yahaya, so I'm one of the co-founders of the Digital Collective. It's not really about me. This session is really about the phenomenal panel of experts that we have on this topic. So I'd actually like to bring them all in and get them to introduce themselves. So if I can bring them all in, all the panelists with me. Perfect, thank you. We have Zarko, Clara, Linda, and William. Let's wait till you just join. Fantastic, and Linda as well. Perfect, brilliant. Well, look, thank you so much for joining. I'm really excited to host a session with you all. I think to start the session off, it would be great for you to introduce yourselves to the audience. If you could just start with your name, your role, the organization you work for, and also the programs that you run. Give them a bit of relevancy to the session we're running today. And again, a reminder, the session is all about pathways to employability. So the importance of assessments, certifications in aligning skills, training, and access to jobs. I will just say to the audience, like Leah mentioned before, we're really keen on getting you to ask questions. This is a discussion. Our panelists will hopefully try to drive some actionable points across. I put the pressure on the panelists to make sure we get across some super actionable things people can go and take away. But those that are in the audience, please share any questions you have, and the panelists will hopefully get to them as we go through. We have 3 questions that we're running through, and then we will have some last remarks and some time for Q&A at the end as well. So if I could start with the panelists running through the questions, the order which I'm going to go through is I'll start with Linda, then Clara, then William, and then Zarko, if that's okay. So if I start with you, Linda, please.
Thanks, Gori, and good morning to everybody. I'm delighted to be here. My name is Linda Keane, and I'm General Manager of ICDL Europe. So ICDL is a modular digital skills certification program. It was established in 1997. You may have previously known it as ECDL, but now as ICDL, it's grown. It's in over 100 countries across five continents. So I suppose to date, over 70 million tests have been taken by 16 million candidates from all backgrounds, all sectors of society. And they've taken ICDL to take those first steps to improve the digital skills, to get into employment, or to advance their careers within employment, and also for further study. So it's truly a global certification program, but it's very much delivered at a local level through our over 20,000 accredited ICDL accredited test centres. They're our partner network, and that's how we deliver the program. In my role, I have responsibility for Europe, so I support our national operators in delivering ICDL. And together with the team in Brussels, I also oversee direct operations of ICDL in some countries in Europe, so Ireland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Belgium mainly. Alongside ICDL, or apart from ICDL, I've been involved in digital inclusion projects, STEM initiatives in education, and ICT professionalism and e-health professional projects using the European e-competence framework. So very interested. I heard a bit of the previous panel, which was very inspiring, and interested to see how this one goes. What I like about it, even though we're talking about big things, we're very much keeping the focus on implementation. So happy to see you all.
Thank you so much, Linda. Some incredible experience so far. Can I move on to Clara?
Yeah, good morning to everyone. So I'm Clara Centeno, and I work as a senior researcher at the Human Capital and Employment Unit of the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. What a long title. So in fact, having worked on digital inclusion since more than 15 years, I'm really excited about the launch of DigiCo and thankful to be invited here to contribute to the event. Just a little introduction of organization. The Joint Research Center is a research-based organization which mission is to provide scientific and neutral evidence to support the development and the implementation of the European policies. In this particular context of today, to support the implementation of digital inclusion policies such as the European Skills Agenda and the Digital Education Action Plan, our unit has been in charge of developing DigComp since 2013, the European Digital Competence Framework for Citizens, which last version 2.2 was released 2 weeks ago. And also we have been developing a family of supporting tools for implementation of DigComp, such as analysis of existing implementations, implementation guides, a self-assessment tool, and a community of practice open to all, hosted by All Digital, which has today more than 600 members across the stakeholders. Today, nowadays, I'm myself in charge at the GRC of the feasibility study of the European Digital Skills Certificate, which is Action 9 of the Digital Education Action Plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Clara. And if I can move on to William.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gori, and congratulations to Gori, Leah, and the team on the launch of DigiCo. My name is William O'Keefe. I'm a policy officer in the DG for Employment within the European Commission, a colleague of Clara's. The Commission is the policy-making and executive institution of the EU, and I'm specifically working in the area of vocational education and training, skills and qualifications. We're working on encouraging cooperation across the member states in the areas of skills, qualifications, and employability. Specifically, today, I'm here to focus on work we're doing right now in developing a European approach to micro-credentials, and which I'll be discussing later on. And really, it is very much linked to this idea of the pathways to employability and how micro-credentials can really be enable lifelong learning for people, the adult workforce, young people, people trying to navigate their careers. So I'm looking forward to taking part in the panel. Thanks very much.
Thank you, William. Looking forward to hearing a lot more about the micro-credentials. And over to Zarko.
Thank you, Gori, and good morning to everybody. My name is Žarko Čižmar. I'm coming from Croatia, from Zagreb. I'm executive director of Croatian NGO Telecenter. This started some 20 years ago as a coordination center of the Digital Inclusion Center Network, providing IT education and training to refugees and displaced persons from former Yugoslavia. Today, I'm coordinating Croatian Digital Literacy Network. We are implementing scientific research and providing policy guidelines in the fields of digital inclusion, digital education, and digital transformation of non-IT professions, particularly in the field of creative and cultural industry and health. And I'm also a member of All Digital. You heard that we are, among other things, coordinating community practice of DigiComp professionals, and I'm board member of the School of Graphic Design and Media Production.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Žarko. Just amazing work. I'm hearing all of you doing, especially around DigiComp, the support that you've had to helping get this off the ground. So the individual programs that you're running, it just sounds like we have a really experienced and an expert panel, for this session. So looking forward to the conversation, as we continue. I guess just on the point of DigiComp, and I think this is a good place to start. Clara, you mentioned that you released the 2.2 of the DigiComp, which is for those that don't know, it's European Digital Competencies Framework, got released about 2 weeks ago or so, which is, it itself has gone on a journey, and as part of the community practice, lots of people have fed into this and really helped, build it into the form it is at the moment. We've seen it gain visibility, especially at a policy level, and by a few employees that have engaged in it as well. But one of the challenges, what we're seeing is we yet see it really be widely used and adopted by organizations delivering digital skills programs across Europe. And it's one of the things that we are at the Digital Collective trying to support. So, know we're very much part of the community of practice, but also helping that implementation approach as well. The first question that I had was really around standardized frameworks. So why do we feel that standardized frameworks are important and needed, for learning providers, right, to close the digital skills gap across Europe? And also alongside that, I'd love to know what ways or what kind of ways are there to effectively help them implement these framework within their programs. And I'd like to start off with Linda, because I know you were involved in Digicomp in the early days, but would love to know a little bit about your thoughts around the importance of frameworks and implementation.
Thanks, Corey. Well, competence frameworks, they are a consistent way of describing the skills, knowledge, competence that people need to progress in a certain area. So obviously we're talking digital today. So they're a common language. That's how they're most effective. A common language in helping people to specify where even at an individual or organization, group, national level, where am I? Where are we now? Where do I need to get to? And then the gap is how am I going to get there? And that's where the learning providers come in, using that same framework. So when I think of competence frameworks, I just can't get the image of the scaffold out of my head. So I think of a building scaffold in terms of what it can do for learning providers. So the framework like Digicomp is like a scaffold that allows you to build your house, your training program. You can build a house, or you can build an office block, or you can build a warehouse or a hotel, all different kinds of buildings, but you use the scaffold to do that. You take away the scaffold at the end and you have your training program. So I think it's there in that capacity. It's super useful for learning providers to help them build their programs. And again, they're doing it using the common language and closing that gap. So as well as knowing where we are, where we get to, we now have the route that was built again using that scaffold, and we're all talking in the same universe. I think as regards learning providers and maybe the adoption of competence frameworks and like Digicomp in particular, I think for learning providers, some countries, the national qualifications frameworks are very strong, and they basically map out the whole landscape from adult education, further education through to higher education. Funding is completely tied in to awards and programs that are either mapped to a national framework or on a national framework. And I mean, I can think of a few countries. Ireland is one where the national framework is very strong. France, Italy, Romania, they're just some of the ones I know. And I think learning providers, sometimes the exercise to get your training program recognized or mapped to the framework can be quite onerous. So I think that's where a lot of learning providers go first, but that only specifies general levels. If you're a digital skills training provider, you need then to go somewhere like the Digicomp framework that has mapped out the digital landscape from very, very basic to very, very proficient. So so learning providers should go to that afterwards, but I feel maybe that the national frameworks is the first stop they need to in order to get the recognition and the funding. And I suppose just in general about competence frameworks, we know that there can be a challenge when people engage with them in terms of making them relate to their particular circumstance. And it's always a balance between something like Digicomp that has to apply to the whole of Europe. So it has to be broad by its nature, but then you lose the specificity of it actually, you know, relating to every individual. There's no answer for that. That's a real challenge. But I see like the additions in 2.2, where the inclusions of examples are going to help that engagement with the framework in that way.
Thanks, Linda. It's a really great point on the the common language, I think, is absolutely needed across the board. And we know even the term digital skills often becomes a harder language to use across many different countries. And I love the idea of the scaffold. I think it's a very visual, very simple one for us to work with as well. And I'm sure there'll be lots of questions coming in around the alignment between national frameworks as well as Digicomp as well. So, and please, if anybody has questions, please put them into the chat or within the Q&A functionality as well. Can I come to you, Clara? You have a lot of experience, obviously, with the framework, and you've talked a lot about the initiatives that you are, or the resource that you're creating to help people with implementation. So I'd love to, again, to get your thoughts on implementation and on the adoption of the Digicomp as well.
Thank you, and I would like to build on what Linda has explained, because we have a similar view, of course, on the use of Digicomp, which is not a standard but a reference framework to support these digital inclusion actions or learning activities, because it's not a standard, but it supports adaptation to each context, education, work, or different groups, different target groups, that it provides value to the stakeholders as they report to us, in fact. And another aspect about its adoption is that its development is carried out through consultation and validation by multiple stakeholders. So this fact really supports its adoption. That, for example, we know today that across all EU member states and beyond, so the Council of the European Training Foundation is working with us as well. So the framework is already adopted across all member states. So it is becoming a reference, not a standard, but a reference across Europe as the reference framework for citizens or for generic skills, digital competence skills. Just for recall, for those who don't know, Digicomp has 5 dimensions. So it has 5 competence areas, 21 competences, 8 proficiency levels from basic to expert, and each competence is described by means of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and it presents a number of use cases. The last version of Digicomp 2.2, for example, provides new examples to take into account new social, technological developments, so that, for example, it has evolved on developing examples for artificial intelligence, disinformation and fake news, programming, remote working, citizenship, sustainability, through participation of more than 100 participants organized across 12 thematic groups. And as I said, this participatory process really ensures adoption because it makes it relevant to the different stakeholders. But I also would like to develop on why it's important to have a common framework. Not only, as Lina says, the most important element is a common language, but because it makes possible the development of an ecosystem for digital inclusion, which requires, this ecosystem requires the contribution of multiple stakeholders, policy actors, formal and non-formal education and training actors, certification actors, social inclusion and digital inclusion actors, and last but not least, labor market actors like employers, public and private employment services, for example. So in fact, it allows, if all the actors take this framework as a reference, it allows all actions to be synchronized towards using a same language towards the same purpose. So it gives inspiration for policies and strategies, and by policymakers, supports curriculum development for learners. It supports also cataloging, design, and development of training content. It guides the definition of training for teachers, public employees, other workers, and it provides a reference for definition of professional digital profiles. It supports also individual specifications in the curriculum, in public employment services systems, and also in job description of job postings. And also it sets a framework for the development of self-assessment tools and assessment tool certification, and it supports a unified approach for the measurement of digital competences. For example, it's used by Eurostat on the digital skills indicator and the International Telecommunications Union, ITU. Finally, last but not least, it can become a reference for the definition of a European-wide recognized digital competence certificate, recognized and accepted by different stakeholders such as governments, employers, or education actors, as it is proposed by the Action 9 of the Digital Education Action Plan. In terms of supporting tools, we have in the DigComp website a number of, I mentioned implementation guides, and I will develop that later on how our DigComp at Work, which is a report and implementation guide, focusing on how to use DigComp in employment settings, focusing on three aspects: how to define competence needs in employment settings, how to develop assessment tools, and how to develop training modules using DigComp. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Clara. There's so much useful information in there as well. I'm really glad that you mentioned that it is a reference. You know, more than just being it's not so much the standard, it's the reference, but also points people with supports people with the guidance on how to implement, how to use it. And then you mentioned a bit towards the end around certification, which is really interesting. And actually, that helps me move on to the next question that I have. You know, is we're talking a lot about assessments, and actually, I think in the earlier panel, I think it was Jackie that mentioned about Reading Writing Foundation's Digimeter, the tool that allows learners to assess themselves, but also helps in driving motivation in investing in their own learning. And I think it's really interesting about how assessments and certifications, especially when we think about that pathway to employability, can help a learner feel like they are in control of what they need to learn and where they need to go as well. So sort of my next question really focuses on assessments and certification. So, and I'd like to ask the question around, well, actually, I'm interested to understand how effective are assessments and certifications in aligning and tackling competency gaps and fulfilling the needs of employers. And I want to kind of focus on employees here as well. And I think best person to bring into this to start with is William. You know, I know you're doing a lot of, you know, amazing work around micro-credentials and working very closely with understanding the needs, of employers. So I'd like to go to you, William, and get your thoughts on this question.
Thanks, Corey. And it's a very interesting question. And in some ways, it's kind of the question we're eternally confronted with when we're considering the policy actions and the initiatives and the work we can do at EU level and the types of cooperation and actions that we can support at national level, because quite simply, the data is clear across the EU 27 member states and further afield that people aren't engaging in enough upskilling and reskilling and learning after they've completed initial education. And we know certainly, you know, every stakeholder here or attendee here knows, in particular in the context of digitalization and the impact of the digital skills, the impact of the digital transition, that skill needs are rapidly transforming. And quite simply, when it comes to policy and the type of work that we're doing, the type of learner we can interact with the least or understand the needs of the least is the adult age workforce, the people who want to manage their careers, be employable, ensure their employability, and move around during their careers and kind of react to this context. So within that, we've been working on micro-credentials of late, and thank you to the reply in the chat. We already got a question and a reply on what are micro-credentials. And to some respects, this is what we've been trying to solve over the course of the last 2 years. And now the Commission presented a proposal for a piece of legislation that we're negotiating with the member states now on what we're calling an EU approach to micro-credentials. So micro-credentials are, at its simplest, the certificate or the award that you get after a short learning experience. I think we all know micro-credentials in some shape or form or with another name, but many of you will be active in this area of certification and short courses. But what's happened in the last 2 years is there's been exponential growth in the area of micro-credentials. Really, the platforms that we might know, Coursera, LinkedIn, and providers like Microsoft and Google, some of them are reporting up to 400% growth in the demand and the uptake of micro-credentials. So we see the real potential, and the potential is there for micro-credentials to support the needs of the adult workforce who need to be able to access upskilling and reskilling in a way that fits with the way that they live and work and learn. Micro-credentials, the delivery of them are meant to be flexible, and they are inherently relevant because they're designed to react to needs in the labour market. In the data that we did find, we find that employers are actively supporting the upskilling and reskilling of their staff. We found that of the employers and the analysis we did, we see that 70% of employers are actively providing training to employees, but that only 1/3 of that number are providing certification. So the certification is key, and this is where the question comes in around micro-credentials, that certificate you get at the end, because this is what gives the ownership of the learning to the learner. They have the evidence that they completed this, and also the visibility, the understanding of it. Corey, you just mentioned in your introduction, kind of empowering and enabling the learner to understand their learning and take control of their careers. So this micro-credential that they get at their end, at the end of the learning, we think is essential and it's key. So within the EU proposal, we've included the Commission proposal, we've proposed a draft definition, draft standard elements, a standard format for describing information in a micro-credential, and then principles for designing and issuing micro-credentials. And we hope that these elements will form the building blocks of what we call an EU approach to micro-credentials, like I mentioned. Of course, this text is addressed to the member states. It's a political text, but ultimately those building blocks, the definition, the standard format, and the principles will, of course, we hope be used on the ground by people involved in issuing and designing micro-credentials. And that we really hope then that these micro-credentials can become part of the response to the needs of employers, and that employers themselves become key users of micro-credentials, and as part of their response, as part of the support they're giving to their employees. So I see that real potential there in terms of the assessment of learning and the certification in helping people manage their careers and lifelong learning.
Thank you, William. There's some really interesting points there around the flexibility or the changing needs of employees and those that are trying to showcase what they've learned what learners are showcasing to employers, what they've learned. I'd love to come to Linda. Linda, if you can give us kind of your thoughts on this too. I know you have a lot of experience, especially within certification and assessments, right? So again, just a little bit about why assessments are important, and also maybe you can speak a bit to kind of what William said about the importance from an employee perspective as well.
Sure. I think I'm going to say some things change, some things stay the same. In terms of evidence of learning. So interesting what William is saying about micro-credentials, and I agree with that. People want they want buildable, more flexible ways to build their own learning path. But it doesn't matter how big or how small the piece of learning is. Ultimately, it needs to be assessed. So I think, as William said, the learner can own that piece of learning and have evidence that they have learned, they have taken on, they've acquired the skills as spec'd out in the piece of learning. If we just talk about evidence of digital skills, so it doesn't matter if you're an employer looking to upskill your employees, or you're looking to hire people. Employers need evidence that the people in front of them actually have the skills that they say they have. As humans, we tend to overestimate the digital skills that we have. ICDL, they have a perception and reality study that they've carried out in lots of different countries over the years, Europe, as well as India and Singapore. And it was very simple. People are asked questions about, can they do particular things, the digital skills related, and then they're asked to actually do them. And across the board, their self-assessed skills far outweighed their actual skills, to quite dramatic effect in every country where it was carried out. So what it boils down to is people do need to be able to produce evidence of the skills, and employers want independent evidence that their staff or their prospective employees have what they say they have. I mean, when it comes to digital and digital skills, really, an assessment at the end of the day, a digital skills assessment is still the best way to prove that somebody has that ability. The evaluation of an individual's ability to perform a specific skill or a set of skills. And certification then is evidence of passing an exam or meeting industry standards. So that's why kind of certification is so important. And whether that's micro credentials or whether it's a larger certification, that doesn't matter. What matters is its certification from an awarding body that's credible, that has a track record, that is industry recognized, certification that perhaps is aligned to a framework, be it a national framework, or has coverage on Digicomp, and the certification is built on rigorous test methodologies. And that's part of the reason why William's project around setting standards for micro credentials is that we have that consistency and that rigor across the board, no matter what you're doing. So yeah, like when I say, yeah, some things change, the way we're learning is changing, some things change to stay the same, in that you still need to produce evidence, and certification is the best way of providing that evidence to prospective employers, or for employers to use it for their staff. You know yourself, if you are sent on a course by your employer, the first thing you're going to ask in the morning of day one, is there a test at the end of this? If there is, you're going to pay attention. If there's not, you don't engage half as much. You mentioned motivation, and it can be a really, really good motivator in the right reasons. It can be a motivator for people to acquire those skills, and to, as William said, take ownership of that piece of learning.
Thank you, Linda. Some really, really great points in there. Yeah, we've all, gone to some form of training where we've always kept an eye out for the test that might be coming up or might not be coming up. And if it does come up, we are probably more attentive. And I think from, when we're looking at micro-credentials and, current credentials, I think that evidence is really important, right? Making sure that it's a very robust approach if you're building any sort of, credential sort of based approach, that the evidence that can showcase that learning has actually been adopted, and being able to show that to the employee is really, really key. So that's really incredible. I'm really glad that you brought that across. So and I just want to put a shout out to the audience. If you have questions, I've seen a few questions coming in already, which is fantastic. We will have a bit of time for them afterwards. If you do have other questions, please do enter them in. We've had some great conversations around assessments and certifications and the evolution of Digicomp as a reference. For my third question, I want to talk a bit about sort of this collective, unified, sort of multi-stakeholder approach. And I want to go to Žarko about this as well. And my question really is why is it important to take a multi-stakeholder approach in tackling digital inclusion for all end goals? That includes employability, but also some of the others that really matter towards kind of employment for vulnerable groups, for example. Do you have examples that you can share? And I want to go to Žarko for this, where kind of these alignment mechanisms can work effectively. I know you talked a bit about your Croatian digital literacy network, and I'd love to get kind of your thoughts on this topic. So over to Žarko.
Thank you. I will try to tell you the story, real life story, what's happening in our network. So as I said, we are in the three fields. The first one, digital inclusion. So what do we need to do? In our view, the key to implementation of digital inclusion, we are talking about vulnerable groups, we are talking about elderly people, we talk about people with disabilities. What is changing? One of the changes, the important change, is the new European policy, which is digital by default. This means that all public services will be online available by 2030. So those who cannot access these services will be extremely vulnerable. So we say, okay, who's the responsibility? Of course, there is a government, there are the ministries, but the real implementation of this digital inclusion is responsibility of local authorities. So we do have multi-stakeholder partnerships. What does it mean? We have NGOs, we have academia. We say, okay, we need to have relevant information. We do implement scientific research, and we want to come with proof to the local authorities and say, okay, This is happening on the policy level at the European Union. This is going to happen at the policy level in Croatia for sure. This is going to happen here on a local level. So we ask our inhabitants, our people from these vulnerable groups, what are the needs? And we combined all this in providing the policy recommendations. Then we say, okay, this is not enough. We invite these policy makers to our network, and we want to test our policy guidelines. So very often the problem with policy guidelines is that they are nice documents. Always they're excellent documents, but very few try to test this in the implementation phase. So we will be testing some of this. What we will be doing is we will be working with the association of these vulnerable groups. So we are testing the model of digital inclusion centers with 2 associations in Zagreb. So based on the results, we will see all the problems. You have 2 approaches probably. One is that if you don't know how to use this online public services, you have to learn. Many people won't. You know, many people, although it's probably very clear that vaccination is important, many people did not. You know, these are the people who still will need to be provided with these services. So the responsibility of local authorities will be to provide them places where they can come and where they will be assisted. And then you rely on the existing infrastructure of libraries, infrastructure of NGOs, infrastructure of schools. These are the places that already exist that can provide these services to the vulnerable groups. Digital education, you want to know what is happening on the labor market. We have employers association as a member. We have association of trade unions as our members. We have association of headmasters from the secondary schools as our members, and we ask them what are the needs of teachers. Those are the people who are supposed to provide digital education services. The important thing is that to know that NGO can provide education and training to 10, 20, 50, 100 people. One school provides, in average in Croatia, in Zagreb, daily assistance to 500 pupils. At the end of each year, 25,000 pupils in small country like Croatia finish secondary school. If we fail with digital education in a formal education, nobody can provide answer to the problem that we are generating in the formal education. So we ask them, did you learn this, what you are supposed to teach in your formal education? And guess what? Most of them did not. You know, they have formal diploma, but because this is changing on a daily basis, we have many domains of digital competencies that you need in order to teach, and they don't. So we ask them, do you want to learn? And they say yes. And so we are going to try to develop a teacher training program which is relevant to the curriculum which is now implemented in formal education, and so on. Digital transformation, all professions are changing. Many people finish formal education. They need support to adapt to the new requirements on a job market. So then we talk to employers. Then we ask them what are the needs, and then we will be doing this. And we have focused now on 2 aspects of the creative cultural industry and health, because that's where we feel that we are strong, where we can provide evidence that is workable evidence. And the last thing, we want to learn from the best. We try to learn from the best practices from Europe, outside of Europe. So this is why we are open to collaboration with anybody who is interested in what we're doing.
Thank you so much, Jarko. I really appreciate that. I think what was interesting you mentioned was about the digitization of government services and why you need to bring a multiple stakeholder approach specifically for that, because it does affect those that might be left behind as well. So I'm really glad that you said that. Look, thank you very much to all the panelists for feeding into this. I think we have some time for probably just one question, and I have seen a few questions come in, and thank you panelists as well for answering many of those questions within the Q&A as we've been going along. The one question I had was from Jana. And Jana says, adapting and development standardized frameworks takes time, and the digital skills that we need in daily life changes very fast. So how can the frameworks keep up with that? And I actually want to ask Clara, if you can give just a sort of a short and sort of your thoughts on how do we keep up with that. I'd love to get Clara's thoughts on this. And I know Clara dropped out for a bit, but now she's back. So Clara, over to you.
Thank you for the question, because it's a capital question, because we have always been very keen on keeping a stability to the framework, because indeed we are concerned that there are many actors developing all sorts of digital profiles, education tools and assessment tools based on the framework. And in what we have in mind is that to keep this stability, the last version of DigComp 2.2, for example, what it brought about were more than 250 examples of implementation to illustrate how the stable framework with the 5 competence areas and 21 competences is still a valid one that can be applied to new developments like artificial intelligence or misinformation, citizenship, and so on. So for a question that was before on the chat, the new framework doesn't outdate the current developments because it brings new examples. The previous framework, yes, the previous version, which was 2018, brought the 8 levels of capability. So that was proficiency levels. But it is our goal to maintain as much as possible the framework, although we are also aware that maybe there may be need for additional competences to be added as technology evolves, because it's a very changing environment. But this is our perspective. And so far, I think we have done quite well on that perspective, protecting the investments of all multiple stakeholders on that.
Brilliant. I think protection is really, really key. It's really important that we can align the multiple stakeholders, all stakeholders involved, to ensure they can really tackle the problem directly, but things are moving fast. So thank you so much for giving your thoughts on that. I think we have some time just for last remarks. I've been absolutely blown away by the answers coming from our panelists. There's some really incredible expertise that's being shared here. So for the last remarks, I have one final question that I want to pose to all of you, and I'd love to give you just a short answer from each of you on this. What is the key advice for those looking to adopt digital assessments, programs, certification programs, or frameworks like DigiComp? What's your key advice for those that are potentially learning providers out there on how to adopt these? I will go in order of the people that we introduced. So can I start with Linda first?
Sure, yeah. So very short answer, just start. Slightly longer answer, just start, but start small. Get into it. There's no point waiting. Get into it. Look at DigComp, see where you're at, engage with it a little bit. Then look at what's out there. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. DigComp is there for you to use. There are certification and training offerings out there, which I'm sure would cover most, if not all, of your requirements. So don't reinvent the wheel, and start small. Take a small group. Don't solve the whole problem in one go. We say like ABC: assess, build, certify. Scale up carefully. Do it with one group. Repeat with the next group. With each iteration, you'll learn. You'll get better at it. So, but the important thing is to start.
Perfect, thank you. And can I move on to William? Can I get your thoughts on this?
Yeah, really, my insights come from what we've learned through this policy exercise over the last while. So I would say it's very important to look at both the needs that you're trying to address, so the skills needs, the learner, the particular target group who you're maybe trying to support or enable, and then it's so important to consider the impact and the usability of the certification or the qualification afterwards, because ultimately, you know, this needs to be transparent, understandable, certificate or qualification that may need to move between countries, between companies, between different types of education and training or labor market systems. So do consider the needs that you're trying to address, but then also look into making sure that you're issuing certificates that are mobile and understandable in different contexts, because this again will go to the enabling the learner to use their learning and to bring their achievements with them.
Thank you, William. And I'll go to Clara just for the closing remarks.
Okay, I will build on both Linda and William's remarks. First of all, we think we are very keen on ensuring that nobody reinvents the wheel. There is a lot of things out there. So start analyzing and studying what already exists and what you can use for that. We invite you to be members of the community of practice, and also to look at all the DigComp published material where we have documented lots of cases and examples with which have already done that. First of all, then consider sharing material, sharing resources, sharing infrastructure and platforms, services to reduce cost and speed up implementation. This is utmost important, as also Linda said. And also, we would like to invite you to look at the DigComp at Work, which is the implementation of DigComp in employment context, the implementation guide, which gives a set of general recommendations, as well as a set of specific recommendations to do the 3 key things: identify the needs, the competence needs, design assessment tools to identify where you are, and then develop training. This guide provides key actions to do, tips, examples, and a lot of resources available for implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Clara. And finally, Jaco.
Thank you. I will give you the same advice as I did in 2014 at the Media Information Literacy Forum by UNESCO. Open media labs. Do the project-based learning. Linda said, if you start and ask whether there is a test, people will pay attention. You work on media projects, everybody will pay attention. Not because it's simple, but because it's difficult, you know, so don't do the gamification for the sake of amusement, but work on media projects, and this will build the whole spectrum of skills with the particular focus on one area of DigComp, which is digital content creation. And digital content creation is key to development of digital economy. So you have fun and you have very useful knowledge and skills that you will develop in this type of education.
Thank you so much, Jaco. I'm glad you took us back in time there, back to 2014. You know, lots has changed, but there's some of the key foundational stuff that still works, and that's really important. Look, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of our panelists. It's been incredibly insightful to hear from you all. We've had some great tips from Linda talking about building the structure, building the scaffolding. Williams talks a lot about the micro-credentials and how they are flexible and trying to adapt to the needs of employees at the moment. Jaco very much telling us about the importance of multi-stakeholder approaches and why we are digitizing governmental services and trying to ensure that we can align people's approaches and that we can keep core to creating the space for people to be able to collaborate, engage around digital inclusion. And finally, last but not least, obviously, Clara, thank you so much for your insight into how DigComp has evolved and the resources that are available to help people with implementation and how people really need to use it as a reference guide. I mean, that's really our focus as well. So again, I want to say thank you to all of you. Thank you for passing the questions through. And it's my pleasure to hand back over to Leah to say, to move us on to the next section. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Gori, and thank you to all the panelists for panel 1 and panel 2. Now we're heading towards the end of the event. So we have 2 last remarks for our closing section. The first closing remark will be from one of our funder, Google.org. We're very happy to have Lisa Belozerova here with us today. And then the last section will be from Gori, who you've seen as a panel chair today. So I'd like to welcome Lisa to the screen, and I'd like to present you very briefly. So Lisa Belozerova is Senior Manager for Europe, Middle East and Africa at google.org, and she's been working with google.org to support organizations with a great social impact with her team. And please, Lisa, welcome.
Thank you, Leah. Good morning. I hope everyone can hear me. So my name is Lisa. As Leah mentioned, I lead our work in economic opportunity at google.org in Europe, Middle East and Africa. First of all, huge thanks to Gori, Lisa, Leah, for bringing us all together this morning, and the whole DigiCo team, and for all the panelists for sharing so generously your learnings and experience. It was truly insightful for me, and throughout the whole event, I was taking notes, and I think a lot of the points that were raised today are hugely relevant for our work at google.org and the broader ecosystem as well. I've been working in this space for many years, supporting dozens, if probably not hundreds of nonprofits across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And in the next few minutes, I just wanted to share some thoughts and learnings from this work and why google.org are so excited about DigiCo's mission. But let me start by giving you a little bit of context about google.org and how the jobs and skills work that we do fits into the larger context of our mission and our work. So many of you know that google.org is Google's philanthropic arm, and our overall mission is to support underserved communities and provide opportunity for everyone. And we do three main things at google.org globally. First and foremost, we provide funding. Every year, we direct 1% of Google's profits to support nonprofit organizations around the world. And our goal is to use our philanthropic capital to help the sector take informed risks. And we heard the theme of risks and failure throughout today, which is very important, and learning through that experience to spur innovation and provide comprehensive support for marginalized communities. We also focus on technology and products. We connect organizations to leading Google technology experts, and also we give access to in-kind product donations such as Google Ads, Workspace, etc., to improve the operations of nonprofits, raise funds, and grow their impact. And finally, volunteering is also something which is deeply rooted in our ethos. We match nonprofits with Google employees who want to volunteer their time and expertise. So as a company that contributes to the development of technologies, we always strive to do more, especially in the context of the impact that the pandemic had on our societies. And we believe it is also our responsibility to contribute to preparing communities for the changes in the labor market and make key digital skills accessible to many. Even before the crisis, is what's clear that the jobs of the future needed a new set of digital skills, and COVID-19 has only accelerated the speed of this transition. But as was already mentioned, but not everyone had access to these vital tools or the skills to use them. And the pandemic has also widened the digital skills gap and social divide further, putting disadvantaged groups at risk of being further left behind. So as a philanthropic organization, our focus at google.org is in ensuring that these digital tools and skills reach the most vulnerable populations globally, and of course also in Europe. And over the last 5 years, we have been funding nonprofit organizations supporting basic digital skills across Europe, such as We Tech Care in France, Chiquitas in Czechia, or Good Things Foundation in the UK, and many, many others. And managing a regional portfolio of nonprofits allows us, and I can also talk from a personal experience, to have this bird's eye view of the work and challenges these organizations face in their critical work. And I wanted to share a few observations from what we learned so far and what we hear from these organizations. And a lot of this will resonate and match to what has already been shared on the panels, in the questions, and in discussions today. what we observe is a limited collaboration and knowledge exchange. We see nonprofits spending a lot of time and financial resource developing learning curriculums, and there's no central sort of database in countries or across Europe where organizations can exchange the content, localize it faster, focusing more on delivery to the learners in need rather than designing the content. And we hear times and times on end that there is an overall limited space for nonprofits to collaborate on different topics to maximize their efforts. Secondly, is challenges with reaching vulnerable groups, and that was one of the questions in the first panel. Finding and reaching those who are the furthest removed from opportunities is hard. Often organizations work in silos from each other and other local stakeholders. So I was particularly pleased to see this exchange today. We also hear from nonprofits that traditional methods of reaching those communities are no longer working or not working as they previously did, but comprehensive social media campaigns, for example, as an alternative methods, are difficult to set up and require talent that is difficult to hire. And the third element is lack of consistent assessment framework. One big stumbling block we also observe is assessment frameworks. Every organization uses its own assessment framework, either it's dictated by their country or their local constituency for the learners at the start of their digital upskilling journey, and it's often difficult to assess how far they have improved. It of course prevents nonprofits from being able to measure and report on the impact of their work, and it's something that we discuss a lot with the organizations in our portfolio. And finally, the gap between training providers and employers. I think this is the element that was least discussed today, and I hope in the next conversations and fora that will be organized, it's something we can raise and dig deeper around this topic, because for the learners, this becomes increasingly hard when they start applying for jobs, and their digital skills levels are challenging to prove. We see that there is a significant gap between the learning providers, assessment frameworks, and employer expectation as well. And this is where very much having a unified assessment framework is key. We know, of course, that a lot of these challenges are complex and systemic, which will take some time to be resolved. However, at Google's philanthropy, we want to support the ecosystem on the journey to find collective answers to some of these challenges. And this is why we supported the creation of DigiCo as a nonprofit serving as an umbrella organization, as a pan-European community builder to help contribute to the exchange of knowledge, learning content, best practices. We're particularly supportive of the mission of DigiCo to streamline the adoption of a common digital skills framework at the European level, and we believe the DigiComp, developed by the European Commission, is absolutely key to this process. We hope this first forum will create a solid foundation for new partnerships and will serve as a meaningful first step towards the development of much needed solutions to support the access of vulnerable communities to basic digital skills. And thanks again to the DigiCo team, Lisa, Gori, and Leah, for your tireless work. And it's incredible for me to observe the journey you've traveled from my initial conversation with Gori at the beginning of last year and today, and seeing everyone gathering here today to have these thoughtful and deep discussions about these critical topics. So thank you so much all, and wishing everyone a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We're very lucky to have you part of this event today, and thank you for your support with google.org. Now the last remarks will be from Gori. Yahaya.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. And thank you as well, Lisa. It's been an incredible journey, like you said, from last year to this point, through the pandemic and everything that's been happening. The need has only, been made clearer to all of us. And again, just what a fantastic speech by Lisa, and thank you so much for talking us through some of the fantastic work that is being done by google.org, you know, really helping organizations like ours, like many out there across Europe and across the world to be able to catalyze their programs and hopefully engage and support those that are from very vulnerable backgrounds. You know, as you can see from the Digital Collective perspective and from DigiCo's perspective, we have a big vision for the impact that we can make, and we can't do it without you. This is a collective effort. It needs everybody to participate, engage, share ideas, best practices, challenges that they face, because there are some big targets ahead. The European Commission has set some audacious targets to ensure 80% of all adults have at least basic digital skills. And we can all agree, Victor mentioned it before, that digital education should be a right, you know, which means that we all have to drive or commit to drive action in this space. Victor also mentioned we learned a lot during the pandemic. You know, some things worked, some things didn't work. And we are well aware that it's not easy to drive digital inclusion, right? So, you know, for us trying to bring together the right stakeholders in a forum like this and many other forums that we're going to be sharing, to align the approach, to ensure that where there is misalignment, you know, we can really make the goal clear and also share best practice, share where some programs are working, and elevating resources and programs that exist that are out there is actually key. We hope to solve this through our targeted programs, and as mentioned before, we really focus on those who need it most: the vulnerable, the underserved, the disadvantaged, those that are marginalized. It's really important that we can support those individuals, and which is why, you know, we will try to bring people together within a community of practice that focuses on those individuals to ensure that they have the support through comprehensive programs that meet their needs. You know, we strongly believe in not reinventing the wheel. You know, we want to elevate resources, we want to elevate platforms, we want to elevate organizations. And we've even got partners on this call in some of the earlier panels that have, you know, really come together to help us do this as well. So we are currently looking for more partners. I think somebody mentioned in the chat a question about, you know, what's our vision moving forward and how can we get involved. You know, Leah, our community and partnerships manager, has put her email in the chat, so please reach out to her. She's very keen to hear from you, to see how we can, you know, bring you into the fold and learn a bit more about your programs and elevate them across the community. We want to drive greater adoption of competency frameworks like Digicomp, other programs that exist out there, see where they're working, you know, those that specifically target those that are from vulnerable backgrounds and communities. And just, again, boost the digital capabilities of those individuals, and also the digital capabilities of the nonprofits that we support as well. So, you know, as part of that, you know, we are launching a tool, you know, as of this week, called Skillify. We will have a number of tools in the pipeline, but this, which is our first to be launched, is a digital assessment tool. It's based on the Digicomp framework, and it's built with inclusion and accessibility at heart, right? It's accessible to all. It's entirely free and will be translated, as Lisa mentioned, into multiple languages in the coming months. As I mentioned, it's based on the Digicomp framework, and it assesses the basic skill levels of learners across 4 main areas. And it combines a mix of self-assessment and testing questions. Linda mentioned before about how, if we're trying to showcase evidence of learning, that you have to go beyond self-reflection questions and going towards testing. So that's very much been embedded within the platform that we've created as well. And we hope that will drive the motivation for individuals to take ownership of their learning, and identify where they can improve in areas or areas where they know that there are gaps within their digital learning as well. You know, as we help these vulnerable individuals assess their skills, we want to point them to a tailored recommendation of learning and programs that are, again, tailored to their needs. So with our partners, many of whom are on the call as well, you know, we work with aligning the recommendations with the programs that they run, and tailor those programs for individuals that are going through the assessment, but also going through the learning at the end of it as well. So again, we are looking for partners. We're looking for individuals that want to help us spread the word about platforms and how we can help those learners really get access to inclusive and accessible platforms that can help them take ownership of their learning journey, get the motivation they need to hopefully get into the workplace or live better lives. We are, again, it's a collective effort. So we are calling on all the support that we can from the people that are involved in this call, but we'd love you to spread the word. Please keep an eye out for the community of practice that we'll be building, focused on those on the needs of vulnerable individuals to get those basic digital skills. We want to work with all partners that are involved in the call, and we're really excited by the opportunity to be able to engage with you all to do this as well. So look, I will thankfully close out the event as well. I want to say firstly a huge thank you for all of our panelists. Our speaker, Victor, thank you so much for giving your thoughts, your insights on and actually making the need and the challenge ahead more visible, more aware, and helping everybody be clear that we do need to work together on tackling this problem. Thank you very much to Lisa from google.org, telling us a bit about how you are supporting nonprofit organizations, and we are really pleased to be able to work with you as one of our funders to do this. Again, thank you to Leah and the team for really bringing everybody together, to make this a reality. And again, to all our panelists, really appreciate your expertise and sharing that, as we know that you will continue to do so in the form that we build for everybody here as well. So just want to say thank you again. Really appreciate your time. Please do check out the website, check out our Skillify platform. Do spread the word and share this within your networks. And we look forward to have you all at our next event. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone for joining. Let's keep in touch by email. I put my address in the chat, and also please visit our website and you'll get news about our next events or next sessions. So thank you so much everyone, and have a very, very nice afternoon. Goodbye.